Okay, in our first two episodes, we shared our burnout moments and pivots. Today, how to scale without turning your dream into a bigger cage.
If growth has ever made you feel less free, you're not alone.
We've done it wrong and right. Let's talk about it better. I've personally had seasons where growth meant a bigger paycheck or a smaller paycheck, but it also came with bigger panic attacks. I've had seasons where growth meant more space in my calendar, more time with my kids, more money in the bank account, but there was a big difference. How intentional I was in scaling and whether I was building a business I actually wanted to work in. Scaling can either be a staircase to freedom or a hamster wheel with a better view. Let's make sure it's the first one.
I totally agree. I think that we all mean well when we're trying to grow and expand on what we're doing. We're like, okay, that makes more money, but does it make more sense? And
Right.
does it just make more busy work for us? Right. And so I hope in today's episode, we can kind of help listeners think more intentionally about scaling and growth and not just growth for growth's sake or for profit's sake, but truly does it move the needle for you when it comes to time or joy?
Right. There's fantasy versus reality. And I feel like when was the last time you thought scaling would fix everything? But it didn't.
Yeah. I I remember probably first time I read 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Great book. Read it a couple times since then. And one of the takeaways was essentially every time you're doing something, ask yourself, is this the best thing I can be doing with my expertise and training at this moment? Or can someone else be doing this for me? What is my time worth? And can I outsource this task? So that was really the first time that I ever hired a practice manager and a biller. And it totally, changed my practice, my life, just overall, like not having to be on the phone with insurance companies, that sort of thing was the first like win, I think, for me as far as scaling. But when we started to hit our stride, this was, I want to say 2022. Well, yeah, post COVID was the first time that I started to get or have more time and more money. And I was like, oh my God, I think I've done it. I think I've scaled. And I've started to feel like I hit my stride. I think I got a little bit of an ego boost. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm doing it. I really figured it out. And I doubled down and invested in my learning on the ops side. So obviously, clinical, I knew what I was doing, but had no idea what I was doing when it came to running a business. So I started to hire this like personal mentor. He was, he's pulling in 15 million a year. I'm like, okay, that's where I want to be. So I'm going to work with him. I joined Vistage, which is like $2,000 a month. I joined EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, Second in Command by Cameron Harold. I invested tons and tons of money, probably $50,000 in my education in 1 year, and really loved learning about that. But as I started to scale, I still had no idea what I was even looking for, and literally almost lost my house trying to do it.
Erica, how about you?
So I would say that, yes, I have also had a similar experience that when I'm able to hire external services to support the practice, it takes something off my plate and allows people to focus on what they're really good at. And I found this practice ownership journey to really be a journey of me learning what I'm good at and where my strengths lie. So it has taken several tries in some cases, and that comes into contrast with my, personality or my tendency, which is I would like to get it right the first time and just be able to go from there. But for example, with finding a good insurance biller has taken several tries, one that really works well with me and with the practice, who's willing to go the extra mile and do what's needed to support us. And I think that's really important for scaling. In some cases, I've used, we have a great high school internship program here in DC, and I have, they're high school seniors. I've had them take on some roles in the practice. It's their first job, first opportunity. They're eager to learn and to please. So this summer, we had a couple guys do our social media, and I was really proud of what they came up with. But knowing that I'm not the one scheduling the posts liberates me, frees me up to do what I need to do, which is really, the tasks of hiring and HR and working with my team. It's all challenging. It's a juggling act.
It is. It really is. We have a high school internship program too, and they're fantastic. I love having them.
Yeah, I've definitely received feedback from other business owners that they wouldn't, touch high school interns with a 10-foot pole. But, I really find that fits well with, the type of leader I am and my bent for working with children and teens. I think they really respond well to encouragement and to support. So it's been a good investment of my time and mentorship, I think.
Erica, how many clinicians do you have right now?
I always struggle to answer this question. I believe there are 11, maybe 12, and then 2 that are onboarding at the moment. And we have some MSW interns as well that will be starting the end of this month.
Do you feel like you've had pretty good retention with the clinicians?
The past couple of years, yes. I think I've only lost one clinician. And I'm honestly still uncertain as to why, but the rest of the team has really grown together, and seems that the culture has developed and they're cohesive. They enjoy each other's company. They really seem to learn from one another and work well together.
How do you keep connection and build culture, cultivate culture, all of that in your practice? Because obviously that's being done to retain clinicians in this landscape where people could easily go and work for, the BetterHelps, the Talkspaces of the world and make more per hour. It's really the culture that then wins out in keeping clinicians, I feel, at least. So how do you do that? Is that you that's building that, or have you also delegated that piece to a culture builder?
It's a combination of both. The piece that I really have invested my time and energy in is a weekly team meeting where we have done a book club together. We choose different topics to discuss. We have celebrations and mark anniversaries and things like that. And I feel that team meeting has really been critical in developing the team culture. We've also done some outside, team building activities from time to time, like we've gone to paint your own pottery or bar trivia together. I think the option of having those activities available for those who want to participate helps a lot. So those are the ways that I've tried to do that. We've also
That's
had
amazing.
a retreat one year, which I thought was a really great opportunity for everyone to get together on a weekend day. A big ask,
Yeah.
right?
So
And
do you come up with those ideas? Is there someone that's like, all right, let's get everyone together, or are you functioning in that clinical director role as well?
I'm currently functioning more in that clinical director role, though if a
Okay.
team member has an idea, I will have them run with the idea. So, for example, we had a team member who was interested in having an anti-racism committee, and I said, "That's great. Let's see who else is interested." And they formed a committee, and as a result of that, they created the anti-racism statement that's on our website. And I was really proud of that effort, and the committee that worked on it seemed really proud of the effort and the work they did too.
Wow. What about you, Jen? Is that sort of how your clinic is run? Do you function in that clinical director role, and are you the culture builder as well, or do you have that delegated?
So I'm not at that point. When I was in the beginning, I definitely was. And when we were a smaller practice, I would say probably closer to 12 to 15 clinicians. That was easier for me to kind of manage. And we would do more staff events. At this stage, I learned, for me, I had to delegate that out, because what was happening as we were getting bigger, it was just, who was doing what. So currently we have an event committee. So we have staff who volunteer their time to be on the committee, and they choose events that, we do get together and do. Recently we did a workout class together, like a kickboxing class, and I was there. So it's coming from them. It's not coming from me. But I had to slowly make that shift, because in the beginning it was mostly me, and I felt like a lot of people were working for me, if that makes sense. And then what happens is, as we continue to grow, I felt like we had some staff turnover, and I realized at that time it can't be about me, because at my time I can't. I would love to mentor everyone. I just physically can't. So I had to kind of get buy-in from everybody. So I had to have the clinical director, and at the time director of ops, and the office manager. They needed to be the people to build staff morale and connection. And then, so they did that for a point. And then now it's more on other clinicians who are volunteering their ideas.
Yeah, and I think that's the idea behind scale, right? Is one is delegation, but two is also figuring out what your strengths are and aligning your daily to do with those things that you really are good at and enjoy doing. And I
Right.
know, like, for me, the culture building was always last on the list. I remember when we had our monthly all hands meeting, I would be so nervous because I felt like I was like the president, like I'm the face of the company. And like you said, you feel like people are working for you. You feel like
Yeah.
the product, and you got to dance. And it's sort of like when you're a therapist, you got to dance and sing for your supper every hour, right? Like,
Right.
this is worth the $300 an hour, especially when you're private pay. So, I did not enjoy that role. I think it's partially because I'm a little bit of an ambivert, and my battery gets drained really quickly when I'm around others. I think there's a little bit of that people pleasing aspect. And so it just was not enjoyable for me. Even though, like, Erica, as you're talking about the book club, I'm like, ooh, I love that kind of stuff. Like, I love talking with other clinicians, but not about work. I don't want to be in that boss role where I'm like, did you meet your KPIs this week? But
Right.
love to hear what they just read and connect with them on a human level, right? And that's so important. I have a clinical director now, and after our practice was sold, she was working as a clinical director before it was sold and then after. And honestly, it's been such a game changer for me, and amazing to watch her, because she is a culture builder. She defaults to checking in with people and like, how you doing and that sort of thing, and really is a connector. And like, I wish I would have had her in that role years ago, because it was not my strength.
I would definitely say that I have carved out a student internship coordinator role, and that individual does have a background in administration or management. And she's done a wonderful job of cultivating the intern program and taking that off my plate or list of things to do. And I think, as I look at the numbers, am hopeful to scale, in the sense that I want to build out some additional roles in the practice. But I also feel like, as practice owners, we have to be so intentional, like, as you've spoken to, Colleen, about who we choose to put into those roles. So ideally, I'd like to hire from within and, shift folks that I've seen functioning really well into clinical director or maybe director of operations roles. But I'm approaching that with extreme caution because of the need to keep the practice functioning and intact, not wanting to hand over too much all at once. But I know that's coming, Jen, and I relate to the numbers you mentioned. Like, I'm kind of positioning right at that point that you said you scaled. And so I see that on the horizon.
Yeah. I think something that, something I did, I wish I knew beforehand, is when I was in your place and I had to slowly start hiring people internally for different positions. I wish I just did trial and error. I wish I just like gave people a stipend to like try this role on. Let's see how this is
Yes.
for 3 months or
Yes.
6 months, and didn't set things in stone. So if that can help anyone out there, because I definitely felt like, okay, now I have to give them this position. And you know what? It's trial and error for them too. Hey, is this a good role for you? Do you like this? Because sometimes too, people want to please us. So they're like, oh, I'll do it. And then maybe they aren't even really full heartedly, interested in it.
Totally. I think that's such a good tip is doing a trial. So I'm hiring a practice manager right now for my practice out here in California. And her thing is I'm not like you're hired and now you get PTO and here's your salary and here's your health insurance. It's 90 days. That's the trial. Every 30 days we check in. We make sure she's hitting these KPIs, and I set those KPIs for her at the outset. And we have actual quantitative metrics that she's going to hit. And then if she does that after 90 days, she's the right fit, right?
Right.
But you can have all of these interviews and everybody can tell you exactly what you want to hear. They're going to tee up all of their references for you so they sound great. But you really don't know if somebody's going to work until they work.
You don't.
It's true. It's so true. I've gotten more, accountable, or I've created more accountability on those intro numbers, like the initial 90-day period. Also delaying some of the big ticket item benefits till to kick in. And that's to, safeguard the finances of the practice. A lot of people told me along the way, oh, start off with all these systems, have them in place. And sure, I received tons of mentorship and coaching around systems and people gave me what they used. But I think there is also a need to do it for yourself and see what works in your particular practice. And even if I started out with a number of systems, I had to take time to really figure out what works for this particular practice in terms of return on commitments that people are making to be full-time versus part-time, those sorts of things.
Absolutely, Erica. And I think so often what we, in terms of systems, like you can have everything in order and you can do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to change it 5,000 times. So I always felt like you don't even need it all together in the beginning at first. You just need like one or two things, working well, and then you just kind of keep readjusting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've heard it said test and pivot,
Yeah.
which is a nicer way of saying throw it at the wall and see what sticks, which is my mantra.
I like joke around. I'm like, I'm constantly doing a needs assessment on the practice all the time.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what about some red flags when our listeners are thinking about, if they want to scale or they want to grow, that sort of thing? What are some signs that maybe your scaling is going to backfire?
I think offering too many benefits or perks up front and not giving the employees or the therapists the chance to show their capabilities in terms of caseload building, retention, following practice rules, guidance, standards, metrics, things like that.
Yeah. When you say that, I think about like the like parenting principles that we teach people about, which is like it's like the difference between being like the nice parent or the authoritative parent, right? It's like your kids don't feel great with no rules and no boundaries and just give them everything that they want. They actually feel better and have less anxiety if they have predictability, structure, routine, there's consequences for bad behaviors. And not to compare your employees to your kids, but there is a parallel to that, I think, where it doesn't feel like a real business or a real job to some people if they're coming in and we're like, yeah, so like just check in whenever you want and just like, here's a bunch of money and like good vibes. You know, like you want to be like, this is what I expect of you. And I'm going to check in with you in 2 weeks and we're going to make sure that that was hit. And if it's not, we need to talk about how we pivot.
For a while in the beginning, I didn't set clear expectations for staff. And then I would be upset that like notes weren't done within a timely fashion. And it was so hard to backtrack to get that in place.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you set that expectation, obviously we've all learned this, but from the beginning, then it's like it's just done. And you know, the new hires are just following protocol. It makes things so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
I think something for me is that I think some practice owners feel the need to like look to see what everyone else is doing and then they add different services.
Mm-hmm.
I just hear it from everyone in just conversations with them like, well, this practice now is doing med management. Now they're doing testing and I'm going to do testing now. And I just wish people would put blinders on and like stop looking to see what people around you are doing and just solely focus on like your practice and what you're doing, because I just think, you know, things will be just more aligned and they'll fit in with your model and how things work in your practice instead of adding an extra service line of something and not even having everything all together.
Yeah, I hear a lot about people like buying buildings. And I
Yeah.
always think of Michael Scott in The Office of like the first rule of business is you need a building.
Yeah.
I've heard this too. A lot. A lot.
It's like, I don't know if that's true anymore in telehealth practice. Like if I had money to put on it, I would say probably 60 to 70% of all therapy sessions are conducted via telehealth these days. What do you guys think?
Well, I have therapists operating on a hybrid basis, so they all split their caseloads. And for each individual, I'd say there's plenty of interest in face-to-face. I am in a city that is, you know, has public transportation and is walkability. So I'd say we do have like strong demand, and almost all of our offices are full with in-person clients right now. But we also have the virtual component, and so folks are doing half their time from their home office. So I see it as split, though I definitely think there is a big trend and desire for virtual. I find it
Erica,
challenging.
you're in DC?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I find it challenging as a therapist who was trained and started off in person to fully make that transition. But, you know, the times are changing.
Yeah. What about you, Jen? You're in New Jersey, right?
So we're in New Jersey. Yeah. We have, you know, our Hoboken and Montclair location, they're more urban and, you know, people walk around, there's trains. So overall, all three of the locations, though, we're mostly in person. People have a hybrid schedule and they might have a virtual day or they might flip flop between having a client be late and switch on, you know, switch to do telehealth. But I think overall in the industry, I would think you're right with those numbers. It's just my practice isn't at that. My practice is definitely more in person.
Yeah. So we're in Massachusetts and California, and I hired sort of a more old school therapist that was very much used to the in-person model. And I don't actually think had the technical capability to do telehealth. So we started saying to clients, if you want in person, we have someone for that. And most people did not take us up on our offer. Most people were wanting that telehealth.
Was
And
this for both Massachusetts and California?
yeah,
Wow,
yes.
interesting. Okay.
But it's also important to note that my practice is primarily testing. It's not
Right.
therapy, right? So I think there maybe is more of a demand for in-person therapy when you're like building a relationship. But when people come to us, they're wanting a diagnosis, they're wanting treatment recommendations. They're not necessarily looking for that long-term therapeutic relationship.
Right.
And because there's so many fly-by-night testing platforms that will report that they can do it online, I think they think their whole experience is going to be virtual. But for that second appointment, the actual testing that takes like 4 to 6 hours, everybody has to come in for that.
I would also add that as a psychodynamically trained therapist, there's, you know, a lot of folks in that school that think there might be something lost in a virtual interaction, something you can't capture, like the essence of the person that, you know, you get a lot of it on video, but you don't necessarily get it all. And I feel like very much like I'm straddling, those generations both. I see the value of in-person therapy, and I think I'm able to do my best work as a therapist that way. But I also can understand the demand for virtual and why that may work better in our current times.
Yeah, well, and I mean, psychodynamic, I think, is one pull for the in person, but also just neurobiologically, we have mirror neurons, right? And so I, I do think being in the presence of other humans is medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something that is lost when you're via telehealth, even though just, interacting with you guys, and I'm always virtual and online these days, there is I do feel a human reset still, but I think there's probably something that's deeper at the biological level when you're in person with other people that's also healing.
Right. I also think about the industry and I wonder with everything with AI and technology, will that actually help our field in years to come where it's kind of like, let's get back to the basics of being in person and social interactions.
Yeah, for sure. I see that. I was watching the Today Show the other day, and they were showing this lady who does Pilates, and it's like rise, and something. It's in Chicago. She does it on the beach, and it's for free.
I
Did you
saw
see that?
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
It looks awesome.
and it looks so cool. And I swear, probably 5 years ago, I'd have been like, no thanks. I'll just do my Pilates from home, being the introvert that I am. But now I do notice that extra sort of craving for just being around people because you don't necessarily have to in today's day and age. And her class is a testament to that. It's like the number of people, I mean, it's in the hundreds now that show up on the shores of Chicago in the morning to do this Pilates. And really, I think it's for the human connection of all being in community with other people. So, yeah, I definitely don't think that AI will be able to replace the mirror neurons. Um, but yeah, I definitely think it can help. When I think about red flags for me, one thing that I hope can be a takeaway from today's episode is the difference between qualitative versus quantitative methods of measuring success. And as a clinician, I used to speak in all qualitative terms. Like, um, I just feel such a strong sense of connection from them. And my EVP would say, Colleen, I'm just so impressed with this team's synergy. And that would be my check-in, would be this team's synergy. I was like, all right, everybody's doing good. EVP, hired, successful, synergy. And then the biller quit on day 2. And the practice manager then quit on week 3. And it was not matching up with the qualitative check-ins that I was having with my now second in command. She was so impressed with everyone's synergy, yet nobody had synergy. Everybody was going the other direction. And that was my first gut check where I was like, this, I think, is about to go horribly wrong. And I couldn't put my finger on it at the time. I was like, something's not matching up. Our cash flow's down. We're really struggling now to make payroll, which we've never done in years past. And yet my second in command is telling me everybody's vibing and she's so impressed. And I started to look at what was going on in the company. We had 2 front office people who were in charge of intake, registration, patient eligibility checks, and that sort of thing. And on Ring Central, it showed 87% of our calls were going unanswered. These people were billing us 100 hours per pay period. So not only were we paying them a normal salary, we were paying them overtime. And they were just texting. Nobody was picking up the phone. And I think that's a generational thing. But patients, especially parents, want to hear from a human that this is an actual practice and that this is like not some fly by night scam operation, that
Right.
they're actually going to take their kid to some place that is, licensed clinicians, and nobody's answering the phone. Meanwhile, we were
Right.
getting raped over the coals. WebMD, health grades. It was like nobody here picks up. I don't know if this is a real operation. Like heart sinking type of feeling when you read that about your business. And it was too late at that point. Our reputation had been wrecked by our front end. And not only our reputation, but the registration was inaccurate. So if you're not getting patients accurate billing details, you're not going to get paid on the back end. And insurance companies love it when you've got one number off. Sorry, untimely filing. So not only were our reputation was suffering, our cash flow, we were hemorrhaging money, paying these people to do things that weren't moving the needle, and providing services for patients that weren't going to get paid. So, I learned a hard lesson really quickly, which was you need to figure out what moves the needle in your practice. Cash is king. And really quickly, who's moving that needle and who's just wasting time.
So, in terms of green flags of sustainable scaling, what's one scaling decision both of you did that actually gave you more freedom?
For me, I think it was going back to that 2000 and what was it? 2014 was when I read 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and it was talking about outsourcing the things that can be better outsourced to someone else. And at the time, I remember just thinking, there's no way I can afford a practice manager. Like I can barely afford myself. There's no way I can afford a practice manager or a biller. Like that's for big medical practices. So I started off with just one person that I hired on an hourly rate. I think it was like $20 an hour. I was like, can you just like answer some phones for me and like take their copay? And she and I, over 7 years, built a very rickety sailboat that sailed very well, but only she knew how to sail it.
Right.
So she sort of built the infrastructure of the practice operations, the billing, all of that. And I just kind of let her go. I was like, you're doing it. Like, good job, girl. But the problem was she held all the keys to the kingdom and was somewhat emotionally toxic. And so it didn't work for a larger organization. As we tried to scale a person that makes everybody else feel like they're doing a terrible job every single day was just a culture cancer. And that was who she was.
Yeah.
And as we started to scale, accountability increased as it does. And a lot of the OGs of the operation did not like that. So, it did quadruple our practice the first move when I hired her. And that would be like the green flag for me is taking some of your tasks that are just like busy work that you're like, why am I doing this? Like somebody else knows how to do this better, and outsourcing that. I think that's your first step, is getting all of that off your plate.
And I think, Colleen, that's such a big step. Like to do it the first time, I remember feeling like so hesitant and like I was micromanaging. But really, when you take that first step, it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Erica?
Well, some of the first steps that I've taken have been to outsource the insurance billing, which I did for myself many years, to identify the staff member who could take on the internship coordinator role. And, I did essentially what you shared, which is pay them a bit more hourly to do the administrative tasks related to that job. And then I also have hopes of perhaps hiring a clinical director and maybe a director of operations internally. I can also say that one of my fails has been taking what I perceive to be great clinicians and making them clinical supervisors for interns. I think I've seen folks give it their all, but not really have the experience or training or investment in order to really do that job well. So I've noticed that after a year or after one academic year, I've had a couple folks step back from that and say, hey, this really isn't for me. And, that's the best kind of test and pivot, right? When people identify that
Yeah.
it's not for them. But I won't stop trying. I won't stop offering that opportunity for growth. So those are some of my experiences.
Yeah, I would also say that sometimes life will hand you lemonade and you think it's lemons. And I remember after I'd hired my first practice manager, I was like, oh my God, why didn't I do this sooner? Like, this is amazing. Like, just first off, just not to have to be on the phone with insurance companies was amazing. But um, I remember CMS, so Center for Medicaid, cut our rates. So psychologist rates for administration, test administration was like, I don't know, like $120 an hour on average. And they cut it to $30 an hour. And I thought, well, there goes my entire business. And I was losing my shit. I was on, I was reaching out to the APA, the president. I was, like, we're going to change this. And I was getting fired up in all the groups, losing my mind, losing sleep. And actually, what happened out of that is that my business quadrupled because with that came along the ability to hire a psychometrist. So no longer did only a psychologist be the person that could administer testing. They allowed you to hire a tech. And really what they were doing is facilitating that model that doctors have used for such a long time. Physicians have PAs, they have NPs. And so it allows them to be in multiple places at once with their license. That's what that rule did for us. And it immediately allowed me to scale. Let's go into the next piece here. Anybody else want to say anything else about green flags of scaling before we move into frameworks and filters?
No, maybe you just start, Colleen, with the framework.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about when we make a growth decision. What is one filter or framework that you guys maybe use to make that decision to know that it's the next best step?
For me, every quarter, I literally print out a list of every service we offer and I calculate out what we're actually making after expenses. So I'll look at all the insurance companies, exactly what we're making. If something is, just not making sense, like we had one insurance payer that I was like, we can't take this anymore. This is just, I don't know, I was paying like $30 a session out of network. It was just like, it doesn't make sense. Paying my clinicians more. So I don't know what to call that, but I kind of always say, like, I do a little needs assessment, but literally I just look through all the numbers, the list, and I analyze as many of the numbers as I can. And I'm not a math person to begin with, but I think I just over time have learned that I have to focus on the numbers. So I just I even analyze by location. I just try to look at the numbers from every possible angle to make sure that I'm not missing anything. Because I think at the end of the day, if it's not making you money or it's not making you happy, I feel like it's just costing you, a lot in both.
Something I'm looking at right
Erica,
now is really making my onboarding process more solid and thinking about what I need to communicate up front to each clinician before they start to help them to get ahead of the curve. Because otherwise I find it's I don't mind at all the Slack messages and outreaches, and I'm always willing to coach and answer questions and help and support. But I'd like to minimize that drain on my time and give them the tools they need to from the start. Another way I'm implementing that is giving each clinician an onboarding buddy, someone who knows the ropes, who can, answer some of those questions and give them insight based on their, previous tenure with the practice.
That's great, Erica, because then they can at least, go to the mentor to ask some questions so it doesn't all fall on you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Colleen?
For me, when making the decision to say yes to anything, there's two filters. One is, does it give me more time? And two is, does it give me more joy?
Right.
And in business, I think the third filter is obviously, does it make more money? Right? Does it make sense? Is there an ROI on this move? And I think before I was just sort of shooting from the hip. I was like, I'll add medication management. I'll add another therapist. Like, just kind of like saying yes to everything because that's just sort of the nature of who I am. But I read Essentialism and I'm really along this track of like, sometimes there's more power in the no than there is in the yes. Um, and there's only so much time, right, in life. And so you got to figure out what you want to do and then sort of laser focus in on that piece. And so, um, actually, this weekend, I always like, I have a million business ideas. That's never the problem. It's too much execution and analysis paralysis. So, just sort of being paralyzed by all the things I've said yes to. So my family and I, we went to San Diego and we did like one of those like indoor skydiving things, the iFly,
Yeah.
and super fun. And of course, my mind goes immediately to, we're going to open this thing. We're going to open this thing up in Orange County and franchise it. Birthday parties, all of a sudden, I'm like, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And it's not cheap. It's like $400 for a family of 5 just to do 2 minutes of indoor skydiving.
We actually did it a few years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, this is fantastic. And so I am like fully like into crunching the numbers at a Padres game on what it's like to open up an iFly in Orange County. And my husband, of course, is just at this point, he's like, he doesn't even like flinch when I'm talking about opening up a business because I have 47 different domains. So he's like, okay, what are we doing now? But I use AI now to figure out what the next best move is. And AI really helps me like trim the fat. So I'll say, all right, so I either have this California practice I'm going to scale, which is essentially what I did with the Massachusetts one before I sold it. Do I do that? Do I do a get ready with me on TikTok and leverage my expertise as a psychologist, giving them tips? Is there a niche in that? Do I do wellness products? Do I do this podcast? Do I do, so I've got a million different things. And it will say, here's the numbers. It does like a SWOT. It costs $2 million to get a wind tunnel for iFly. You have to have $2 million in just for the tunnel.
Wow.
And then another $2 million just for the infrastructure. So I was like, okay, well, that's out because I don't have $4 million. But TikTok, you got to do 4 to 8 TikToks a day for you to get above the rest in your niche category. And it's starting to diminish in returns in terms of creators on TikTok versus YouTube Shorts. So that is what is helping me now figure out the lowest hanging fruits. And AI, of course, goes, your lowest hanging fruit is your practice in California because you've already got the infrastructure, you have the license. Nobody else has like a license to do testing. You've got the insurance contracts. That's the first thing that you do. And so that has been a really helpful tool for me in scaling and is understanding the numbers first before I just like act on a feeling.
Yeah. And Colleen, I do that too now. I mean, I'm sure you do, Erica, too, but I really am utilizing ChatGPT or any of those other platforms to really help hone in and almost get all of my ideas in the right place. But just like you said, to kind of analyze, like, what are my next steps and how do I look at this from all angles?
Yeah. Okay, Erica, you want to lead us in on the last listener first steps?
Sure. So something that I did in my practice that really helped to, align my activities was to have a mission and to set up a mission statement for the practice. And it's currently under construction because this summer in our team meetings, we've been talking about and workshopping our mission statement to reflect the practice as it's operating today. But I think that setting a mission statement really can help to, set your practice on track with your particular ideas and values. We also have a set of 5 values that we aspire to work towards. And, a way that you can also incorporate this into your practices, adding the mission statement and values into your employee reviews or evaluations, asking questions about that are related to values. I also do that in the interview process to see how candidates align with our mission and values. So those are some tips that I have for, making your work especially meaningful.
Well, as Erica was talking about mission and values, this is where I have like such a shame spiral. I'm like, I have no mission. I mean, like, I know that sucks to say as a clinician, but like, yeah, I mean, obviously you want to help people, right? That's your
Yeah.
mission and your values. But my mission in owning a business is to make money. That's my mission. And I hear that so much in our field, like our mission statement and our values. And I'm like, there must be a value to that because everybody says it. But like when my mentors go, what's your mission statement? I go, to make money. Like this is a business, right?
Yeah.
And so we need to be making money. That's the mission. So what do the people want? Give the people what they need. Do it well, do it quick, do it efficient. And that has always been sort of the mentality that I've run it. But I'm envious of that piece that Erica's talking about, which is like, it genuinely does sound like for her, it starts with the mission.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably how a practice should be run.
I felt that way, Colleen, for a while. And then we really did narrow in on our values and our mission statement. And I will say it really helps myself and the team when we have to make a decision. Because if we're making a decision, if the decision aligns with our values, I feel like it's gearing us in the right direction. Like, let's just say one of ours is accountability. So if we're stuck on something and then I'm like, well, you know what? At the end of the day, we have to hold everybody accountable. So if they're not being held accountable, then it's time for them to go. And that's part of our values. Do you know what I mean? But so for me, I've looked at it that way and it's been very helpful. And I think it's been very helpful, again, when it doesn't come from me, because I want people to lead with the same values. So I need to teach it to them and they have to lead and make decisions based on the same that I would do in the same situation.
Yeah. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
I think it also goes back to the challenge of running a business that helps people, the mission being, yes, to help people, but also, yes, a business has to make money. And I think a lot of therapists and helping folks sit at that intersection of dilemma about how to make that happen, how to make both happen effectively. I know I still struggle with following my mission and, having the practice continue to grow financially and to pay people well and to offer benefits. It's an ongoing challenge and dilemma. So I think both aspects are valid in, for all group practice owners and practice owners to consider how to meet both the mission of helping people and making money.
And I think most practice owners are on one, are too far over on one or too far over on the other, right? That's what I always, it's like, you got to find that middle ground.
It's tough. It's a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say in terms of what recommendations I would give for first steps, it would be every morning I do sort of like a mental connect and redirect with my own head. So if you like think about Daniel Siegel's stuff of like the parenting, like connect and redirect with an emotional child, that's how my brain is in the morning. It's this emotional child that has all these needs and wants, and it's so terminally unique. And, all my problems are so unique and no one has as much stress as me. And that's how my brain wakes up every morning. And then, so I just do a little sort of prayer and I'm like, okay, God, you're ultimately in control. God is ultimately in control in my view. I am not the one that's making the plans here. I can think I am, but ultimately that's already set in place. And we're here 4,000 weeks on average. And so at the end of the day, it's not that damn important, whatever I think is important. And the most important thing is my kids and my family and being present. And that's it, really, is your health and the legacy that you leave behind, right? If you want to get in terms of how I see what my value is or what's perspective. So that first step for me every day is the mental reset that I need to have perspective on whatever's going on. And as an owner, a group practice owner or business owner for any matter, you have decision fatigue. Every day you're faced with 100 different decisions that you have to make. And it feels like, Jesus, like, when is this going to stop? Like, I'm tired of having to make decisions. So that little shift every morning has really helped me to be like, ultimately, like, Colleen, you can do whatever you want, but you're just like a little tiny ant just marching around in this world. And it doesn't really matter today whether or not your clinician's going to quit or whatever. Like, it's going to be fine. You'll be fine. Everybody will be fine. The second thing I do is I do like a brain dump. So before I get on social media, email, text, anything like that, I do a mental brain dump of everything that is sort of coming up, which is like, I got to get my son's prescription refilled. I need to set up times with my clinical director this week to make sure that we're on track with a new practice. All that's down before I even get into emails or texts, because if I get into it in email, I'm immediately in this reactive place of like, oh yeah, I need to do that. Oh yeah, I need to do that. I need to get back to this person. And I haven't started with what moves the needle for me today. I'm just reacting to everybody else's needs.
I love that. I'm very similar to you, Colleen. I have a similar kind of morning routine with it. I will say in the mornings, I try to tell myself, what are the 3 non-negotiables I have to get done today? And sometimes those things might be taking my son to the dentist and going to the grocery store, or other days it's, work related. But I try to almost like prioritize my day. And I'm trying to even do that even more so going into like when my kids are in school in September of I want to fill my day with like more joy and more fun things on top of the work stuff and on top of the house responsibilities and being a parent and everything else that comes with it. So I don't really have an answer for that, but I do hope to like find a little bit more time to have a little bit more fun. But what do you do for yourself, Erica, to kind of get in the right mindset of, have honestly just trying to, I think, also be the best you can be every day.
Well,
and trying to run this business.
I think it's I'm sitting here taking a pause because there are just so many things in front of me every morning. It's a bit overwhelming, but I do utilize the notepad on my phone to make, I have a long ongoing to-do list, obviously. But I do also employ the strategy of pulling from that list and looking at what today's priorities should be. And kind of, realizing there are certain critical things that need to happen in a day to get to the next day. So just taking the big list and breaking it down to maybe 3 to 5 things, I think can be really helpful. I also take time to, do the daily Wordle and a couple other little, fun rituals in the morning. I like poetry, so I'm reading through a book of a poem a day, and with that, those little activities that sort of give me a little meaning and inspiration to push me forward in the day.
I love that. Some days I like to start my day with a quote, just because I feel similar to the poetry. It's like you just want something that feels good and you're aligned with, that's like bringing you into your day.
Yeah, for sure. And I also feel like the Wordle is my investment in brain health for the future. A little puzzle every morning can't hurt.
I was trying to find my prop here because you guys really teed it up for this. I do a bit with my family, and I took my to-do list and I made it a long, like Santa style scroll list. And so whenever my husband goes, well, I'm doing stuff too, I pull out the scroll as like a physical. And so whenever my kids go, hey, mom, can you get this for me? I go, let me just add it to my list. And it's like a bit that I do. And they're like, oh my God. And everybody hates it. But I do think as women, you have to account for the
Yep.
mental load that you carry as well. So you've got your mom world, your personal life, your business life, and then you have this mental load that you're constantly checking this list for everybody else, right? And that's this third job that I think is invisible to other people except us. And it was therapeutic for me to have that physical list now because I'll go, oh, hold on, let me just add that to the list. Let me see here where I can find some space.
I love that. It's so true. All the invisible emotional labor that we carry on every day. It's
Yes.
never ending.
Totally.
And I used to think when my kids got older, it would be less, and it's not.
No. Oh no. It's just different problems. I
It's
feel
just
like
different.
as kids get older, it just becomes more psychologically complex.
Yeah,
And when they're younger, it's more physically complex.
right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Jen, you want to bring us into the
Sure.
last segment?
So, okay, guys, let's do one freedom fall and one freedom win takeaway for our listeners. Erica, do you want to start?
Sure, I can start. Well, I'll start with my win at at end of the summer, or it is the end of the summer. At the beginning of the summer, I hired an intake coordinator for the practice, and I feel she really has made a difference in handling our intake process, all of the calls and emails that come in. It saved me a lot of time. I just covered while she was on vacation, and it reminded me of what a heavy lift that is and how happy I am that I no longer have to do it. So that's a win. A fail, I think, it would probably be, we have lots of sirens here this morning.
There's peaceful Rock Creek.
It's concerning. It's usually so quiet. Hiring without accountability, maybe not imparting to clinicians clearly what the expectations are for growing and managing their caseload. That kind of fits with my statement about onboarding. Just setting goals and setting expectations early on can really save a lot of work in the long run, and making sure to do those initial, 3-month or 90-day evaluations that are a guidepost for how the clinician is assimilating to the practice, how the work is going, with always asking what they need from you. I'd say that would be a potential fail, not doing that.
How
Yeah.
about you, Colleen?
Well, first, I would just piggyback on what you're saying, Erica, which is so important, and one thing that I don't think we get right when we start, at least. And that was what was the book? Rockefeller Methods, and then they later wrote Scaling. I forget what it was, but it was about oversight. So yes, one half is putting the systems in place and the KPIs and knowing what moves the needle in your practice. But the second half of that, and one that we often forget, is oversight. Do you follow up on what you've asked people to do, and are they doing those things effectively? How are they managing their time? How are they moving the needle? How do they work? Right. And so I just think we get so busy, nobody's overseeing any of this stuff. And so I think what you're saying, Erica, is so important. And I don't know if that's something that you came upon, if that's just naturally how you are and that was an instinct for you, but it certainly was not for me. It was something that I just had to kind of learn that hard lesson along the way. I would say a fail and a win is the fail for me was abdication versus delegation. Before I got into Vistage, I thought I was effectively delegating. And Vistage is this the sort of like, it was recommended. It's like a group of other people. They might own lots of different businesses, but everybody has the same pain point. And the feedback I got was, you abdicated, you didn't delegate. So as soon as I got that EVP in place, I was like, you good? Cool. Went on summer break with my kids, was like, awesome, you got it, you got this, yeah, vibes, synergy. And then we had the cash flow issue, and I realized she was focusing on our font and our logo. Meanwhile, nobody's answering our phones, like nobody was billing right. And so I didn't effectively delegate. I just abdicated. And so that's the first piece, I think, is understanding the difference between those two is a big win. And that was the win for me. That was arguably one of the more difficult times in my entire life, was what happened in the last year, going into 6 figures of debt to keep my clinicians paid while trying to figure out why insurance wasn't paying us, and literally having my house on the line, and then clinicians coming after me, like thinking I'm somehow like holding their money, my reputation, everything. It was really a hard year. But in that past year, I learned more, ironically, about operating a business than I ever did in the $50,000 I invested in Second Command and EO and Vistage, like boots on the ground in the muck, was where I learned the best lessons, was in this past year.
I was about to say that, Colleen, is anything I think I do well now, it's from doing it not well, doing it poorly, or mistakes I made. I mean,
true.
That's the only way I've really learned that things can go better, is by making mistakes. And obviously there's always regret and a wish that I could have known, but in reality, I think any business owner or operator is going to realize that you learn from making mistakes.
Yeah.
And Colleen, you're going to take everything that you learned for the one business and pour it into the other business, and I'm sure it will be
100%.
extremely successful.
Well, I can give you an example, just the trauma of being blind to my P&L for so long in the Massachusetts practice, and what that caused for my family, for my mental health, for my sanity. Now in my California practice, I'm like on it like a hawk, and I might be like a couple $100 in the wrong direction, but not 6 figures, right? Like it will never get there again, because I've got that hunger now, or that propensity to make sure that I'm monitoring that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's so easy to read these things and be like, yeah, of course, like you put in KPIs and you monitor them and oversight, and you read it and you hear it and you're like, yeah, but sometimes the hardest lessons learned are the ones that you never forget.
Right. For me, my biggest freedom, I would say, fail was when we had the insurance clawback of $300K. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared as a business owner. I didn't really even think at that point that I needed 3 to 6 months payroll saved up. Naively, I should have realized that. I just never thought, wow, I need to have all this extra money set aside in case of a bad day. So for me, that experience taught me, okay, I need to be prepared for anything that could happen in my business. What if my business shuts down and I still have these 3 leases? Like, I need money set aside. So that was probably definitely my biggest, fail, but it has prompted me to have money set aside now, instead of having to take from my personal savings, loans. If this were to happen again, at least I have the money set aside for the business that the business can jump in and I wouldn't have to do it myself.
Well, and Jen, to your level of comfort, obviously, what was the clawback about? Was it one particular service line? Was it one particular clinician? Because that's a
It
huge
dealt with
clawback.
telehealth, and I don't know if I should say the insurance payer, but it's United Healthcare.
Oh, big shocker.
Yep. And some of that money Not all of it. Some of it was paid out over a long period of time, but we never recouped it. Not all of it.
Jen, it's not slander if it's truth.
Yeah. And
Just
trust
remember
me,
that.
we after that happened, we thought, should we not accept this payer anymore?
Yeah.
Reasonable to.
And now I've read that some of the payers are implementing AI just to deny every third claim.
Oh, they
because
are. Yeah.
their research shows that we don't have the bandwidth to fight it. So we don't. We
And
just
what I
say
wish
goodbye
I
to that.
knew is I wish I actually hired an attorney at the time. I was so, in over my head with that was the time we were scaling the practices. We were growing so much. I had the 3 locations. I was so busy with all the minutia of what goes on that I should have actually taken a pause and said, wait, this is not fair. I should have hired an attorney that could have fought that for me instead of having me and my office manager and biller be resubmitting things and trying to fight it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, did you
But
ultimately do that, or you just fought it and won?
we fought it and we did not win, but we just kept fighting it. Yeah, but I needed help. I should have just been like, I don't know this stuff. I needed assistance, and I wish I had an attorney jump in and help us at the time.
Yeah. Well, so that maybe that's your win. I mean, it seems like that's the common theme here is our fails are our wins in disguise. But that's one thing that it sounds like to me is a difficulty is for you, Jen, when the going gets tough, you get going.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. And you probably do most of the time, but it becomes our weakness because sometimes there's someone their strength is better.
Oh, 100%.
At doing that thing, which is a lawyer in that case, right?
Yeah. And I think something else I do on a smaller scale that I learned was I'm not a micromanager, but because I've done all the roles in the practice, there was a level of oversight that I'm kind of always checking in to make sure that they were doing things properly before I had the correct term of KPIs in place. I didn't know that at first. I was just trying to do the way that I thought that I'm like, okay, was everybody called back in a timely fashion? All the intake calls, was this done? Was that done? And it was just, so that was another thing that I learned is I really should have paused at that time and put KPIs in or another strategy, to be honest, instead of me coming across as micromanaging staff. So that was something else. And then I think a win is I learned the hard way because I am somebody who does everything myself. I learned the hard way to have other people help me. So I ended up having really just having to build leaders within the company. And I had to I needed their help. I needed their guidance. I needed their wisdom, and I needed them to understand my vision so they could assist. So that's probably my biggest win.
That's so smart to get people from within the company that already have that. I think sometimes it's hard we take for granted the tribal knowledge that our people have, having already been there and knowing how it is versus bringing in someone else that's a perceived expert in their area.
Right.
And ultimately, as humans, we all want to feel competent. We want to feel like we're that what we're doing is making a difference, right?
Right.
And so when you're building a leader out of the people that work with you, I think you're building on career pathing really for them. That's building retention because they're no longer just trading their time for money. They got skin in the game for this too. They got a sense of competency and I'm building this as well.
Yeah. And even to this day, I try to have my leadership team check in with all of our therapists to really understand what their goals are. And so we have career mapping, kind of a path already for them if that's something they want to do. If they want to be supervising, if they want to do social media, if they want to, be out there in the community and do more and speak, at least we have an idea of where they want to go.
Yeah. Your license doesn't have to be your life sentence.
Scaling isn't about doing more. It's about doing the right things the right way.
Next time, delegation disasters and hiring heartbreaks.
All right, ladies, we did it. All right, I have a meeting with my new boss in 5 minutes. Speaking of which,
Good luck.
Enjoy.